In the cold silence of deep space, where stars shimmered like ancient whispers and blackness stretched infinite, a signal pulsed, a beacon in the void. It wasn't loud, nor did it carry threats or warnings. Yet it shook every listening post from the inner colonies to the edge of explored territory. Transmissions decrypted in fragments, stumbling over ancient encryption. But one phrase was clear, repeating endlessly, "Come, it is time." Aboard the diplomatic cruiser Solace, Commander Isla Monroe stared out at the stars, her breath caught between awe and dread. The message played again in the background, its strange rhythm as haunting as it was beautiful. She was not the type to scare easily. War had carved resilience into her bones. But this wasn't war. It was something older, something deeper. And whatever waited at the end of that signal, it wasn't human. Born in the rubble of the Europa conflict, Isla knew loss intimately. She watched her parents vanish in a flash of artificial daylight when she was 7, collateral in a political bombing no side claimed, raised by a rotating chain of military caretakers. She learned early that hope was dangerous and trust a luxury. But she had clawed her way to the stars, carrying peace as both weapon and shield. The ship's AI interrupted her thoughts. "Commander Monroe, we are approaching the coordinates of the signal origin." Isla nodded, turning away from the viewport. "Drop us out of slipstream. Full visual scan. Prepare diplomatic protocol." The crew moved like clockwork, efficient and hushed. Everyone felt it. An unspoken gravity in the moment. They were approaching Illyar's Veil, an area previously marked as gravitationally unstable and considered devoid of life. Until now, when the ship slipped into real space, the view screen revealed a planet that shouldn't exist. It hung in the darkness like a pearl woven from shadow and stormlight. Rings of metallic debris circled its equator, wrecks, monuments, or perhaps both. Towering constructs, dormant yet humming with an unseen power, drifted serenely in orbit. "Is this a graveyard?" whispered Lieutenant Drex, the youngest among them, his voice barely audible. "No," Isla murmured. "It's a gate." A diplomatic team was assembled, composed of linguists, biologists, and historians. Yet Isla stood at the head, not for her knowledge of languages or diplomacy, but because she had seen the worst of humanity and still chose to believe in its better parts. She was the kind of leader the galaxy might listen to, if only it would listen at all. Their shuttle descended through electric clouds that flickered with alien auroras. The surface was a dreamscape, obsidian plains broken by crystalline growths, rivers of blue fire winding between floating isles tethered by gravity-defying vines. It was not a place shaped by nature as humans understood it, but by intention, by design ancient and deliberate. They landed at what appeared to be a structure, though calling it a building betrayed its grandeur. It rose like a cathedral grown from the bones of planets, translucent and breathing with light. As they disembarked, Isla's boots struck a pathway that shimmered, lighting a trail as though recognizing her presence. Then they appeared. From the shadows of the grand hall emerged figures unlike any known species. They were tall, easily 3 meters, and their forms shimmered with bioluminescent pulses that traced their veins like constellations. Their eyes, vast and unblinking, held galaxies of memory, though they had no visible mouths. Isla felt their presence in her thoughts, each word a note in a silent harmony. "We are the Illyari, and we have waited for you." Her breath caught, not just at the grandeur of their presence, but the emotion behind the words. It was not pride or arrogance. It was longing. It was sorrow. And above all, it was hope. The Illyari spoke not with voices, but through shared memory. Images flooded her mind, not forced, but offered. She saw the birth of stars, civilizations rising and falling in the blink of cosmic time. And then she saw Earth, humanity, from firelit caves to orbital stations. Not just milestones, but emotions. Our first fear, our first laughter, our first sacrifice. The memories ended, and Isla found herself on her knees, eyes wet with something more profound than tears. Around her, the team was equally shaken. The Ilyari had shown them not just a timeline of a species, but its soul. One Ilyari stepped forward. Its form was more angular, its energy more rigid. Though the other stood serene, this one radiated tension. In her mind, Isla heard a voice different from the rest, sharper. We have watched, but not all watching leads to understanding. Your species burns as often as it builds. How can we trust that you will not burn us too? The voice belonged to Valen. A ripple of unease moved through the delegation. Isla stood slowly, wiping her face but not her resolve. We are flawed, she said aloud, her voice echoing in the chamber, translated by the Ilyari themselves through thought. But it is through those flaws that we grow, through our failures that we learn. And yet your wars are endless, Valen pressed. Your hunger insatiable. Isla met the alien's eyes without fear. And your isolation has kept you alone for millennia. We both carry scars. But if you see only the worst in us, you deny yourselves a chance to be more than witnesses. You deny the possibility of kinship. Valen did not respond. Instead, the Ilyari turned away, their form dimming. The matriarch stepped forward, if such a term applied. She was taller still, her body shimmering like starlight caught in motion. When she spoke, it was less a thought and more a feeling, melancholy wrapped in warmth. We knew this day would come, that the children of stars would find us. We hoped they would come not with blades, but with open hands. Your hearts are many-colored, Isla Monroe, but not all are dark. Perhaps it is time. The chamber dimmed. The Ilyari retreated, leaving the humans in stunned silence. Back aboard the Solace, Isla sat in the observation deck, eyes on the alien sky. The crew murmured around her, theories swirling, all palpable. Yet inside, Isla felt the weight of something heavier than diplomacy. A species so old they had seen the rise and fall of empires, without lifting a hand, had called them, not because they needed saving, but because they needed something else. Connection. Isla remembered being 10, standing alone at the edge of a refugee camp, cold and starving, when a woman, stranger to her, stranger to everyone, handed her half a ration bar. No words, just a small act of kinship. Maybe that was what this was too. The Ilyari were that woman, and humanity stood cold and alone, wondering why the stars watched them but never spoke. Until now, she recorded a message to Earth, voice steady. This is Commander Isla Monroe. We have made contact. They are not gods. They are not monsters. They are something far more terrifying. They are kind. And they want to know if we can be too. She ended the log and sat in silence. Behind her, the stars burned softly, waiting for an answer. The days that followed their arrival on Ilyari soil unfolded like pages from a forgotten myth. The humans were guided not by maps or beacons, but by resonance. The Ilyari, it seemed, did not construct cities in the way humanity did. Instead, their structures grew, formed from living stone and light, shaped by intention and memory. There were no boundaries, no doors, yet each space felt private and sacred. The air was heavy with ancient energy, and though the sky remained a soft gradient of indigo and teal, time seemed to move differently here, both faster and slower. Commander Isla Monroe remained at the center of this improbable dance. Though she moved through alien corridors with purpose, internally, she wavered. Every glance from the Ilyari felt like it pierced her essence. They didn't look at you so much as through you, absorbing your intentions more than your words. And yet, Isla had not come to deceive. She had come to answer a call. Still, Even in that clarity, doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. The matriarch, whose name in human terms would be a disservice to her presence, walked beside Isla on paths suspended in the air, seemingly held aloft by thought. Around them, floating gardens shifted shape with the passing of emotion. Here, even nature responded to feeling. The matriarch's voice echoed in Isla's mind, soft as twilight. You carry your people in your heart. That is a burden few survive. Isla didn't respond at first. She glanced over the edge of the pathway, where liquid light flowed through the air like inverted rivers. They don't always want to be carried. Sometimes I wonder if they even want to be seen. They want to be understood, the matriarch replied. But not all know how to allow it. Isla sighed. And your people? Do they understand us? The matriarch paused. We remember your first sparks of thought. Your kind looked at the stars and did not worship them. You challenged them. We watched you learn fire, shape steel, ride the storm. And we hoped. But hope, she said, with something that might have been regret, has its own gravity. It draws in light and darkness alike. It was the first time Isla saw weakness in the Ilyari, a flicker of exhaustion behind eternal wisdom. It made them real in a way that omniscience never could. Then why reach out to us now? Why after all this time? Because some of us still believe. Her words were a thread barely tethered to the air. But not all. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden change in atmosphere. A new presence entered the space, and even before Isla turned, she knew it was Valen. The energy around him was sharper, more angular. His form, while not aggressive, radiated tension like a wire drawn too tight. You speak of belief, Valen said, addressing the matriarch. But belief cannot erase consequence. They do not understand balance. They will take what they can until there is nothing left. His gaze fell to Isla, and she stood her ground. If you fear us so deeply, why not seal your gates again? Why invite us just to argue for our exile? Because a wound must be touched to be healed, Valen answered. And perhaps to confirm it cannot be. Isla exhaled slowly, measuring her words. You think we're contagion. I think, he said, stepping closer, you are a paradox. You build and destroy in equal measure. You elevate the noble while glorifying the cruel. Even in your finest hour, your shadow grows. Isla's voice was steady, and yet we came with open hands. For now, the matriarch interjected, her tone firmer. Valen, enough. Our purpose is to understand, not to condemn. But Valen was undeterred. Understanding without judgment is permission. If we call them kin, we bind ourselves to their fate. He left without another word, and for a while, silence hung between Isla and the matriarch like a third presence. Later, alone in her quarters, if they could be called that, Isla replayed the day's events. The walls shifted gently, responding to her moods. A warm hue spread across the ceiling when she sat on the organic structure that passed for a chair. Her fingers traced the armrest absent-mindedly as she thought of Earth, of its storms and sunrises, of its people, messy, hopeful, stubborn, capable of both unimaginable cruelty and breathtaking grace. She thought of a man from her childhood, a soldier who once gave her his coat during a freezing night in the ruins of old London. He had no reason to. She never even learned his name. He disappeared into the chaos the next morning. That simple act had stayed with her far longer than the terror surrounding it. Wasn't that what mattered in the end? The small acts that defied despair? A chime, soft and melodic, interrupted her reverie. It came not from a comm panel, but from the room itself. The Ilyari didn't separate space and function the way humans did. They lived in harmonies, not compartments. Enter, she said, unsure if it mattered. A young Liari stepped inside, barely taller than she was. A rarity. Its bioluminescence was calmer, shifting in gentle blue pulses. "I am Lyra," came the thought, warm and curious. "I was born during your World War III. We do not measure time as you do, but I understand its weight." Isla offered a tired smile. "Then you understand a lot. I would like to know you, not your title." "You?" Isla hesitated. It was rare anyone asked that anymore. "I'm not much outside the title," she said. "But I used to sing. When I was a child, before the world went quiet." Lyra's light flickered with delight. "Then we share something. Our people sang once too, before the silence grew too loud. They spoke for hours, not about diplomacy or politics, but about stories." Lyra asked about Earth's oceans, and Isla asked about Ilyari sky gardens that bloomed based on mood. They exchanged laughter, and when silence came, it was comfortable. When Lyra left, Isla found herself feeling lighter. Not hopeful, not yet, but less alone. The next day, a council was summoned. Isla stood in the center of a spiraling chamber, surrounded by Ilyari elders. Each one bore the gravity of ages, and she felt like a child before them. Valen was present, arms crossed, luminous tendrils coiled tight. The matriarch opened the assembly with resonance that echoed through bone and thought alike. "The question is not if humanity is worthy. The question is if we are still capable of trust." Isla stepped forward. Her voice was clear, but her heart pounded. "I cannot erase our history," she began. "We've made mistakes, some unforgivable. But in every dark chapter, there were those who defied it, who risked everything for someone else's tomorrow." She looked around, meeting each ancient gaze. "We are not perfect, but we are not without merit. We don't seek dominion. We seek connection." Valen responded coldly. "Connection can become chains. And isolation can become a tomb," Isla countered. A murmur of thought spread through the chamber, not loud, but deeply felt. The matriarch raised her hand, and silence returned. The council will deliberate. Isla bowed slightly and left, her steps heavy. Outside, Lyra waited. "You did not speak to convince them," Lyra said gently. "You spoke to reveal yourself. That's all I have to offer." Lyra's eyes glowed softly. "Then it is enough." Back in orbit, the Solace maintained silent watch, its crew tense, awaiting word. Isla returned to her chambers and sat again in that knot chair, staring into nothing. For the first time in days, she felt the stirrings of fatigue she could not fight. As sleep pulled her under, one thought echoed. They had not rejected her. Not yet. Tomorrow would decide everything. The air inside the council chamber trembled with anticipation. The Ilyari did not deliberate in words alone. Their decisions were woven from memory, emotion, and ancestral energy, flowing to the living walls of the chamber like echoes in stone. Commander Isla Monroe stood at the edge of that current, her presence a ripple in a vast ocean of ancient stillness. She had spoken her truth, laid bare her people's story, and now she waited, neither helpless nor hopeful, but resolute. It was Lyra who first returned to her, a small but steady presence amidst the weight of unknown judgment. Their bond had grown rapidly, though unspoken rules still hovered between them. Lyra's approach was quiet, thoughtful, and when they spoke, it was with a careful gentleness. "The council has not spoken," Lyra said, her light a somber shade of violet. "But the matriarch has summoned a vision right." Isla's brow furrowed. "What is that?" "It is rare," Lyra replied. "A rite where memory is shared not through words, but through presence. You will see what we have seen. You will walk our grief, our hope, our betrayals. And in return, you must show them yours." A chill passed through Isla. There were stories in her past, scars she had buried deep enough that even her mind no longer dared to linger on them. But if this was the bridge, if this was what it would take to be understood, then she would not retreat. Hours later, Isla stood barefoot within a sphere of woven light. The chamber had no walls, yet felt enclosed by something ancient and unseen. The council encircled her, not as judges, but as witnesses. The matriarch extended a hand, not physically but psychically, and Isla allowed the connection to form. The first sensation was warmth. Then came the weight of time. Visions unfolded, not like dreams, but like memories burned into her soul. She saw the Ilyari's first encounter with sentient life in the galaxy, a fragile species who spoke in colors and harmonics. They had welcomed the Ilyari with awe and reverence. But others followed, warlike, greedy, insatiable. Entire civilizations turned to ash under their expansion. The Ilyari had tried to intervene, tried to protect, but intervention bred enemies. Their gifts became weapons in the hands of the unworthy. Over time, their benevolence turned to silence. Then came their retreat, the withdrawal from all contact, the closing of the starbound gates, the long silence. Isla could feel it like a wound, the loneliness, the ache of immortality without purpose. She wept without realizing. Then, slowly, the vision changed. Her own memories now surfaced, not controlled, not chosen. The right demanded truth. She was 5 when the first city fell. She remembered smoke curling into the twilight sky, remembered clutching her mother's hand as screams echoed through narrow alleys. Her father had died shielding a stranger. She had never seen it, only heard the story repeated in half-voiced whispers. Years passed. She had become a soldier not out of pride but necessity, a leader by survival, not design. She carried the guilt of those she couldn't save more fiercely than the accolades of the few she could. The right plunged deeper. A mission gone wrong. The day her squad was ambushed in the ice fields of Europa Prime. A young recruit, Juno, cried for help as a firestorm roared. Isla had reached her, dragged her from the flames, only to realize too late that another soldier, Kale, had been left behind. His screams haunted her dreams. The pain was raw, open. She saw the council watching her, not with condemnation, but with something far heavier, understanding. The right ended not with words, but with silence, a sacred pause. Isla staggered slightly, her breath shallow. Lyra caught her gently, guiding her away. "You showed them everything," Lyra said, almost in awe. "Even the parts you never spoke aloud. I didn't have a choice." "You did," Lyra said, "and you chose truth." That night, Isla didn't return to the guest quarters. Lyra took her to the river gardens, a place where the waters sang, each stream a different harmony. They sat on soft moss beneath stars that pulsed in fractal rhythms. "Do you think they'll accept us?" Isla asked after a long silence. Lyra's expression dimmed. "I think they already have. The question is whether they'll admit it." "Valen won't," Isla murmured. "No," Lyra agreed. "He's bound to loss. His mate was killed in the last war by a species Ilyari once helped. Isla's heart ached, and he thinks will bring more death. He fears loving again," Lyra said, "and he fears you've already stirred that within him. Not romantically, spiritually. The idea of trust, it terrifies him." Isla leaned back, watching the mirrored stars ripple in the water. "I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be a beginning." "That," Lyra said, "is why they chose you." The following day, a storm swept across the Ilyari skies. Not weather, but of tension. A rogue faction had emerged. They called themselves the Silence, a group of Ilyari who believed isolation was the only path to survival, and they intended to close the gates permanently. Valen, though cold, was not among them. Isla and Lyra were summoned urgently. The matriarch, her form dimmed with stress, explained the threat. The silence had activated a resonance bomb at the gate's core, an ancient device capable of sealing the Ilyari's world from the rest of the galaxy. Forever. "We have 6 hours," she said. Isla stepped forward. "I'll stop them." "This is not your fight," Valen said, appearing from the shadows. "It became my fight the moment you called us family," Isla snapped. Valen stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Together, they descended into the heart of the Ilyari world, where crystals sang and conduits hummed with the pulse of a living planet. They moved through caverns etched with stories older than Earth's sun. Each step forward was a plunge into deeper uncertainty. When they reached the core, the silence stood in a crescent formation. Their leader, an Ilyari named Zephin, turned slowly. "You should not be here," he said to Valen. "You of all should understand." "I understand loss," Valen said, "but I will not let it dictate our future." Zephin's gaze turned to Isla. "And you bring war wrapped in empathy." "I bring choice," she answered. "Don't take it from your own people." Zephin hesitated. "We remember the screams, the fires, the betrayals." Isla's voice cracked with emotion. "So do I." She stepped forward, unarmed, heart exposed. "But I also remember the songs, the hands reaching out, the nights where one act of kindness saved a life. You think closing yourselves off will protect you. It won't. It will only end you quietly." A silence followed, thick and unbearable. Then Zephin stepped back. He deactivated the device. One by one, the silence dispersed. Isla exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Later, as they emerged into daylight, Valen walked beside her. "I was wrong," he said. Isla smiled faintly. "We all were at some point." That evening, the Ilyari held a ceremony unlike any Isla had seen. Not for politics, not for treaties, but for reunion. Lights danced across the sky. Music, older than language, filled the air. For the first time, Isla saw the Ilyari truly feel. Lyra approached, holding out a thin, glowing ribbon. "This is our bond thread," she said. "It marks a moment of shared truth. Would you wear it?" Isla took it with reverence and tied it around her wrist. Always, above them, the stars shimmered, not as distant fires, but as promises. And for the first time in centuries, the oldest species in the galaxy no longer felt alone. Humanity had been seen and chosen. The warmth of the Ilyari sun bathed Isla's face as she stood before the gate. Open now, pulsing with soft, harmonic rhythm that no longer evoked fear, but a sense of belonging. Around her, the Ilyari moved like currents, their colors gentler, their voices infused with something fragile yet powerful. Hope. It had been days since the confrontation with the silence. Since then, the atmosphere had changed. She could feel in the way the elders looked at her, not as an outsider, but as someone who had survived the right, who had endured their pain and shared her own. Lyra remained close, though neither spoke much. Their bond, forged in fire and vision, didn't demand constant words. It existed in the quiet gestures, the way Lyra's light flickered softly when Isla entered a room, or how Isla instinctively paused when she felt Lyra nearby, knowing they were attuned now in ways deeper than thought. But not all had embraced a change. Ambassadors from Earth were due to arrive within the week. The first official delegation. Already, transmissions buzzed through the Ilyari skies, coded and cautious. Humanity's leaders, diplomats, scientists, opportunists, were eager. Isla knew what they were hoping to find. Allies, technology, maybe even weapons. And the Ilyari were aware. Ancient though they were not naive. "We stand at a threshold," the matriarch said during one of the council's closed sessions. "Your kind reaches for us with both hands, one open, the other clenched." Isla nodded. "We've always been that way. But we learn. Sometimes slowly, but we learn. Valen remained skeptical, but he no longer opposed her. He watched her like a man who had dared to believe again and didn't quite know what to do with it. The central conflict had shifted. It was no longer about acceptance. It was about what came next. Isla had not expected leadership. She didn't crave it. But the Ilyari looked to her now as a bridge. And bridges must bear weight, even when they tremble. That evening, as the stars began to shimmer, Isla found herself standing on the cliffs beyond the city, where the horizon melted into dark velvet. Lyra joined her, silent for a long time before speaking. They will come seeking answers. I know, Isla said, and you will have to decide what to give them. I know that too. Lyra tilted their head. What if they demand too much? Isla hesitated. Then I'll remind them what it costs to stand here, what we endured to even be heard. I'll make sure they see that this isn't just opportunity. It's responsibility. Lyra smiled, faintly. Then perhaps you are one of us after all. But beneath the serenity of the moment, a shadow brewed. Reports filtered in, subtle at first, like background noise in a symphony. Unregistered probes had been detected in nearby sectors. A human ship, unauthorized, had bypassed gate protocols. Small infractions, but they rippled. Trust was a fragile flame, and it flickered dangerously in the wind of ambition. Isla called a meeting with Earth Command. Her voice was calm, but her words cut through pretense. If you sabotage this alliance before it's begun, she said, you won't just lose the Ilyari. You'll lose what they were willing to offer: peace, knowledge, purpose. On the other end of the transmission, Admiral Kenneth stared, unblinking. We are investigating the violations. I'm not asking for a report, Isla replied. I'm demanding restraint. Do not let fear dictate policy. We've spent centuries fighting for survival. Don't let us miss this chance to build something better. The call ended without agreement, but something had shifted. The Ilyari saw her fury, not as human volatility, but as righteous fire. Many who had once doubted her now stood behind her. But Valen, ever the skeptic, remained silent. You don't trust them, Isla said, confronting him directly. I trust what I see, Valen answered. And I see patterns. New faces wearing old intentions. Isla didn't deny it. And yet here we are, because you are different. I'm not, she said quietly. I just carry the weight differently. The day the delegation arrived, the skies were silver with expectation. Shuttles descended like birds, sleek and humming. Ambassadors stepped out, dressed in polished uniforms, their expressions mixtures of awe and calculation. The ceremony was brief but ceremonial. The matriarch welcomed them with her usual grace. Lyra stood as guardian, and Isla stood between them as a tether. But the real test came in the quiet after, in private meetings and silent observations. Isla watched how the humans reacted, eyes darting to crystal towers, whispers exchanged over translation devices. She saw hunger in their gaze, wonder, yes, but also a kind of acquisitive need. And she saw how the Ilyari recoiled subtly, their trust retreating like a tide. That night, Isla walked alone into the archive gardens, where memory was stored in living vines and echoing roots. She pressed her palm to a stone and whispered, not a command, but a question. What do I do when both sides pull in opposite directions? The garden didn't answer, but Lyra found her there hours later. You fear losing both, Lyra said. Yes. Then perhaps it is not about pulling, they said, but teaching both sides to reach. Isla turned to them, emotion stirring in her voice. How do I teach humanity to see without wanting to possess? How do I ask the Ilyari to trust without forgetting what came before? By doing what only you can, Lyra said. Stand, speak, endure. And so she did. In a gathering held before the gate, Isla stepped forward. Both people surrounded her. The air was thick with apprehension. I was born from a world of conflict, she began. Raised in war. Trained for survival. I've watched hope die. I've buried it more times than I can count. But I've also seen it reborn. In acts of mercy. In moments of truth. In bonds that form not through similarity, but through shared pain. She looked at the humans. You came here expecting gifts. You will receive none until you prove you deserve them. She turned to the Ilyari. You gave me the chance to be seen. Now I ask you, let us try. Not blindly, not without boundaries, but bravely. The crowd was silent, and then Valen stepped forward. She speaks with flame, he said, and for the first time in 1,000 years, I feel warm. He knelt, an ancient gesture of respect. Slowly, others followed, Ilyari and humans alike. The gate shimmered behind them, not as a portal, but as a symbol. Isla stood at its center, knowing this was only the beginning. Ahead lay conflict, misunderstanding, perhaps even betrayal, but also connection, evolution, the promise of something greater. Not unity through sameness, but family through choice. And that was worth everything.